The morning sun spilled through the grand windows of the mansion, painting the polished marble floors with warm streaks of gold. Alexander, the millionaire, sat in his study, hands folded over the fine leather desk, eyes fixed on the city skyline beyond. On the surface, everything seemed calm, but inside, a storm of anticipation churned. He had made the decision that would change the dynamics of his life completely. He would pretend to have lost everything, all his wealth, his businesses, and even his prized collection of art and cars. Not for greed or revenge, but to see who truly loved him, who would stand by him when the glitter of money vanished. He wasn't just testing his fiancée, Isabella, or their twin children, Lucas and Lila. He was also testing the people closest to them, especially their loyal housekeeper, Maria, whose quiet presence had always been a calming force in the mansion. Alexander had watched her for years, noticing the gentle care she poured into the household. But today he needed to see her in a new light, how she would react when the world they lived in suddenly crumbled. He called in his assistant. He explained the plan once more, the details meticulous and precise. The company would issue a statement of bankruptcy, the banks would be notified, and the lifestyle they knew would shift dramatically. There was risk involved, yes, but Alexander felt the outcome could reveal truths money never could buy. The day started with Isabella entering the study, radiant in a silk dress, the twins trailing behind, their small hands clinging to her sides. "Good morning, darling," she said, smiling, unaware of the invisible veil of deception he had draped over their lives. Alexander returned a polite smile, nodding, concealing the tension coiled inside him like a spring. He allowed her to sit, asked about their plans for the day, and spoke of casual topics, letting the normalcy of family life linger just long enough before the storm broke. By midday, the first signs of the ruse began. A sudden notice arrived from the bank, and Alexander feigned shock, eyes widening as he crumpled the papers. Isabella gasped, concern flooding her face. "Alexander, what's happening?" she demanded, voice trembling. The twins clung to her skirt, sensing the change but not understanding its gravity. He struggled to compose himself, then spoke, voice low, heavy with fabricated despair. "It's gone, Isabella. All of it. Our fortune, everything I've built. It's all lost." The words landed like a hammer, and Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but what truly mattered was what she did next. She held the twins close, whispered comforting words, then looked at him with a mixture of fear and determination. "We'll get through this," she said firmly, as if anchoring herself in the role she had chosen, love and loyalty radiating from her every gesture. Throughout the day, Alexander watched their reactions, taking careful note. Friends and acquaintances who arrived to pay condolences were kept at bay, their whispers irrelevant compared to the intimate testing happening in the mansion itself. Lucas and Lila, too young to fully grasp finances, sensed the tension through their mother's emotions, clinging to her while looking at their father with wide, innocent eyes. Maria moved quietly among them, ensuring meals were prepared, children were bathed, and that the house retained a sense of comfort even as the illusion of ruin spread like a shadow. Her loyalty seemed unwavering, but Alexander wanted to see if hardship would awaken something deeper, whether compassion, integrity, and true devotion would emerge when nothing remained to gain. As evening approached, the tension in the house became almost tangible. Alexander feigned a late-night phone call, stepping into his private office where Maria often passed. He overheard her murmuring to herself, worried about the family's future, wondering how they would manage. She spoke of sacrifices she would make, of finding ways to help the children thrive despite the sudden disappearance of wealth. It was not just concern for the children, but genuine care for the family as a whole, and Alexander felt a pang of admiration mixed with relief. He had always known Maria's heart was pure, but seeing it in action under the pressure of hardship was a revelation. That night, as Isabella tucked the twins into bed, she whispered promises of resilience, of love that transcended material comfort. Alexander lingered in the doorway, unseen, feeling a mixture of pride and melancholy. The plan was just beginning, but already he had glimpsed glimmers of truth in the reactions around him. The housekeeper's devotion, Isabella's unwavering determination to protect and nurture, and even the twins' innocent trust formed a tapestry of genuine human emotion that money had never bought. As he closed the door quietly, he knew that the next day would demand more from everyone, pushing boundaries further, testing patience and courage. But for now, the first chapter of his experiment had revealed that love, loyalty, and integrity could survive even the harshest illusions, and that perhaps, just perhaps, they were stronger than wealth itself. The following morning, the mansion felt different, heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves sensed the tension Alexander had unleashed. Isabella had barely slept, the twins restless in their cribs, their soft cries piercing the otherwise silent halls. Alexander lingered in the shadows of the corridor, observing without being seen, fascinated by how quickly their lives had shifted with just a whisper of loss. He had staged small disruptions throughout the house overnight, bills left unpaid, notices slipped into letters, accounts supposedly frozen, and watched Isabella's reaction. She moved with quiet determination, organizing meals on a tight budget, consoling Lucas and Lila when they fussed, never once blaming him for the sudden collapse. Her resilience was remarkable, but Alexander wanted more than courage. He needed to see compassion, selflessness, the raw instinct to protect family over comfort. Maria, meanwhile, was a quiet storm of action. She moved from room to room with an almost invisible grace, ensuring the children were dressed, breakfast prepared, and that the household maintained a semblance of normalcy despite the fabricated chaos. She whispered gentle words to the twins, telling them that their father loved them, even when Alexander pretended to be distracted, overwhelmed, or hopeless. It was in these fleeting moments that Alexander saw the depth of her character, the subtle courage of someone who cared not for recognition, but for the well-being of others. He realized that testing her loyalty was almost unnecessary. Her devotion was instinctive, but he pressed on, curious to see how far her compassion could stretch. By mid-morning, Isabella faced the first real test of her character. Alexander, feigning despair, claimed that a creditor had arrived, demanding immediate payment, and that there was no way to cover the debt. Panic flashed in her eyes for a brief instant, but she quickly gathered herself, kneeling before the twins and embracing them. "We'll find a way," she said softly, her voice firm but tender. "Money doesn't define us. We have each other." She then turned to Maria, seeking advice as though Maria's counsel carried weight beyond her role as housekeeper. Together, they strategized, making lists of necessities, finding creative ways to stretch the resources at hand, and even improvising small joys to keep the children from sensing fear. Alexander watched, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. Isabella's love wasn't just for him or the children. It extended to those who supported their family, valuing partnership, empathy, and teamwork above all that. As the day wore on, Alexander introduced another layer to the experiment. He staged a false opportunity for Isabella to gain financial relief, but only at a personal moral cost. A friend of his pretended to offer a significant sum, provided she would agree to betray him in a minor but symbolic way, like signing a contract that transferred their shared assets to the stranger's control. Isabella hesitated for only a moment, glancing at the twins and then at Maria, and immediately refused. "I won't do that," she said firmly, shaking her head. "Our family is built on trust and love, not shortcuts or betrayals." Alexander felt a surge of relief mixed with awe. Her decision was not influenced by fear or convenience, but by her integrity, the same quality he had long admired but could now witness fully in action. Meanwhile, Lucas and Lila, unaware of the machinations around them, began to explore the mansion in small bursts of curiosity, their laughter a counterpoint to the tension Alexander had created. Maria stayed close, watching over them, ensuring that their innocence remained intact even as the world around them seemed uncertain. She told them stories, encouraged them to play, and even crafted small meals from limited ingredients, turning scarcity into creativity. Alexander realized that her impact on the children was profound, shaping their values through love and guidance rather than wealth or privilege. The housekeeper's role, once taken for granted, now seemed central to the family's survival in ways money could never replace. By evening, Alexander decided to escalate the test further. He staged a scenario in which Isabella and Maria were forced to manage a crisis alone. The mansion's power supposedly cut, the twins sick, and supplies dwindling. The two women sprang into action, Maria's practical knowledge guiding them through the challenges, while Isabella provided emotional support and direction. Together, they turned adversity into collaboration, solving problems with patience, ingenuity, and teamwork. Alexander, hidden behind a doorway, felt a mix of admiration and guilt. The deception was harsh, yet it revealed what he had hoped to see: courage, compassion, and loyalty that transcended wealth. The night ended with a quiet moment in the nursery. Lucas and Lila, finally asleep, nestled together as Isabella sat beside them, exhausted but resolute. Maria quietly tidied the room, her presence calming, almost maternal in its understated care. Alexander lingered, watching from the shadows, feeling an unexpected warmth in his chest. The housekeeper's devotion, Isabella's integrity, and the children's innocent trust had formed an unspoken bond stronger than any fortune. He understood now that the heart of a family was not measured in dollars or properties, but in love, loyalty, and selflessness. As he retired to his study that night, Alexander contemplated the next phase of his experiment. The facade of loss had already tested their character, revealing truths that might have remained hidden under the comfort of wealth. But tomorrow, he planned, would challenge them even further, testing their resilience, compassion, and the unbreakable ties that bound them together. For now, however, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The family he had always known was real, not because of money, but because of the love that endured even under the shadow of false ruin. The next morning dawned with a tension unlike any other, a quiet anticipation that filled the mansion from the grand hall to the smallest corners. Alexander knew today would be decisive. The tests he had orchestrated, the illusions of loss and hardship, had already revealed strength, compassion, and loyalty. But he needed to see one final truth: how much love and integrity could withstand the ultimate challenge. He observed Isabella preparing breakfast with practiced calm, the twins playing at her feet, laughter attempting to pierce the heavy atmosphere. Maria moved seamlessly around them, ensuring everything ran smoothly, the quiet heart of the household, patient, wise, and unwavering. Alexander felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. This day would determine not just who stood by him, but whether the bonds of family could survive adversity. When stripped of every superficial safeguard, he staged a sudden crisis. A supposed fire in one of the storage rooms, smoke seeping through the vents, alarms blaring. Isabella froze for a heartbeat, but instinct kicked in immediately. She scooped up the twins and ran, Maria following closely, guiding them to safety. Alexander stayed hidden, watching the precision of their teamwork, the urgency in their movements, and the courage in Isabella's eyes. She refused to panic, refusing to falter, speaking to the children in calm tones, assuring them that everything would be okay. Maria, steady as ever, led them to safety, carrying supplies, extinguishing the small fabricated fire, her knowledge and presence making the difference between chaos and controlled response. Alexander felt a surge of emotion he could barely contain. These women, this family, were extraordinary. Their devotion to each other, their courage, and their instinct to protect the innocent were priceless, worth far more than all the riches he had ever owned. After the fire was contained, Alexander finally stepped forward, revealing himself. Isabella's relief was immediate, but her gaze sharpened, suspicion flickering as she waited for explanation. The twins clung to her, curious yet sensing the emotional intensity of the moment. Alexander held up his hands, a mixture of gravity and warmth in his expression. "It was all a test," he said softly. "A way to see who truly stands with me, who loves not for wealth, but for who we are together as a family." Isabella's eyes widened, a mixture of astonishment, anger, and then something softer, understanding, flowing through them. "You did what?" she asked, incredulous yet unable to hide the emotion welling in her chest. The twins, innocent and perceptive, looked between their parents, sensing the shift from fear to truth, their small hands clutching their mother's fingers tightly. Alexander explained the entire plan: the fake bankruptcy, the staged crises, and the reasons behind every carefully orchestrated hardship. Isabella's reaction was a mixture of relief and quiet exasperation, her eyes shining not just with tears, but with admiration for the lengths he had gone to understand the hearts of those he loved. Maria, standing quietly behind them, allowed a small, satisfied smile to surface, knowing the truth now, but never needing acknowledgement for the sacrifices she had made. Her loyalty had been tested, and she had proven beyond doubt that love, integrity, and dedication were not contingent on wealth or recognition. The twins, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, giggled, their innocent joy filling the room, breaking the weight that had pressed on everyone for days. Alexander moved closer, kneeling to the twins' level, taking their small hands in his. "You are braver than you know," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "And your mother is the strongest person I know." Isabella smiled, finally allowing herself to breathe fully, tears of relief running down her cheeks. She wrapped her arms around him, a silent forgiveness passing between them, a bond renewed through understanding, not just love. Maria, standing at the edge, was acknowledged at last, Alexander approaching her, gratitude and respect evident in his gaze. "You've been the heart of this family," he said quietly. "I cannot imagine these days without your guidance and care." Maria bowed her head modestly, a gentle smile touching her lips, knowing the truth needed no embellishment. Her actions had spoken louder than words ever could. As the day settled into evening, the mansion felt lighter, almost reborn. Isabella prepared dinner with Alexander's help, laughter filling the kitchen as Lucas and Lila played nearby. Maria watched, content, knowing her role had transcended duties, becoming a vital part of the family's fabric. Alexander realized that wealth had never defined the essence of family. It had been in the courage to face hardship, the resilience to protect loved ones, and the selfless care of those whose loyalty was earned not by riches but by integrity. The twins tugged at his sleeves, asking questions, giggling, completely unaware of the elaborate test that had unfolded around them. He knelt to their level again, embracing them, feeling a sense of peace and clarity he had never experienced in all his years of success. Later, Alexander and Isabella sat together on the veranda, the sun dipping low behind the city skyline, painting the world in warm amber light. She leaned against him, tired but triumphant, and he reflected on the lessons of the past days. Pretending to lose everything had been painful, even cruel in some ways, but it had revealed something invaluable, the true measure of love, family, and loyalty. It was not money that bound them, but trust, compassion, and unwavering commitment. Maria joined them with a quiet nod, signaling that her role was complete yet ongoing, her presence a constant reminder of selflessness and care. In that moment, the mansion was no longer just a symbol of wealth. It was a testament to endurance, love, and the unbreakable bonds that connected them all. As the night embraced the mansion, Alexander understood finally that the experiment had not been about testing weakness or finding flaws, but about revealing strength, courage, and the kind of love that could survive even the harshest trials. Isabella rested her head on his shoulder, the twins asleep at their feet, and Maria tidied quietly, a guardian angel in human form. Alexander smiled softly, knowing that no fortune could ever compare to the wealth of trust, love, and loyalty he had witnessed these past days. He had lost nothing. In truth, he had discovered everything.